the UK honours system, you may be to varying degrees familiar with the scheme. We wanted to offer a bit of contact in these rather unusual times, so that you knew where to find us if you needed to ask a question, and we could talk you through a little bit of the way the scheme operates, you know, how to enter, the criteria and so forth. And I'll do that first, and then Alan Lawson, who is the director of our prizes office and who is responsible for some operational matters to do with this scheme, how it runs on a kind of day-to-day process basis, we'll talk about the assessment process, how the entries are assessed. But first of all, I would like to thank, on behalf of the Trust, Northumbrian Water Limited for the pro bono help they have given us in running this webinar. And that's through the good offices of one of our trustees, who is also Chief Executive of Northumbrian Water. So I hope, let me go straight on without taking too much time. We'd like some, you know, to deal with some questions if there are any towards the end. This document that I'm holding is the entry document for this round of the scheme, the 14th round, which officially started in 2020 and is concluded in February 2022 with the presentation of awards to the prize winners in this round. So this was sent out electronically and with a hard copy for backup, I think on the 10th of November. So it should be lurking somewhere, the hard copy should be lurking somewhere in the institution, in the university, probably in the Vice-Chancellor's or Principal's office. But there is a full replica of this document, which is a kind of expandable document. So it goes like that. And all these pages are on the Queen's Anniversary Prizes / Royal Anniversary Trust website. If you Google Royal Anniversary Trust, it comes up with the prizes. And the website, I think, is quite well navigable, and you'll be able to find this document. Basically, the question we are asking in the scheme, and let's may help to go to the basic issue, is a kind of research question. And I have sometimes, when you know, meet a lot of heads of institutions, and in the early days, because I've been doing this now for 13 years, in the early days, a Vice-Chancellor might say, I really haven't got a clue what this is all about. How technical is it? You know, is it broad brush? Does it have to be, is it all about applied research, or is it pure research, etc., etc.? So I would then say, well, look, it's actually quite straightforward. You have to imagine that Her Majesty the Queen is going to come into your room, into your office in 20 minutes, and the Queen will say, tell me, Madam Vice-Chancellor or Mr. Vice-Chancellor, what are you doing? What is your university doing that is of outstanding quality, interesting and innovative, and in some way new, and above all is benefiting the people? I use the people as a very, very, you know, high level sort of characterization, but it is about innovation and benefit, and the incentivization or the recognition of these qualities in our institutions, both higher and further education centre. So you'll find in the entry document on page 2, where it says how to enter, that the criteria are drawn extremely broadly: excellence, innovation, benefit to your university or college, and benefits in the wider world. So how do you express, you know, your response to that question, that basic sort of research question, practical research question? And it's done through the main, what we call the main narrative. The entry is the main narrative, which is the 10-page account of the piece of work or the area of work that you've selected, you know, to build your case around. And that will involve, obviously, it's 10 pages maximum. It's a description. It will have something about the quality, some attestation of the quality. It'll have something about why the work is innovative or in what way it is innovative. It doesn't have to be unique. That's not the point. But it has to have aspects, attributes of innovation in it. something transformational, something very distinctive, or sufficiently distinctive to mark it out from other work going on in the field. It's got to show some benefit to your own institution, because that is to do with the advancement of education. You know, how does this bit of work support the, you know, the strategic plan, the forward plan of the institution and its general well-being, whether it's financial or in terms of staff, student morale, recruitment, etc. And then finally, benefits in the wider world. You know, what is the work doing, and can you prove it? Or rather, can we prove it by the consultation we do with various sources? Can we, to our own satisfaction, find out enough about the impact of the work to get your entry onto the shortlist? And that, in a way, leads on to Alan's bit. We can talk, and I'll hand over to Alan right now, I think. Is that okay, Alan? So we're looking about, we're now shot to the end of the assessment process in September, where we're about to make, bring a shortlist to the Awards Council, and from the Awards Council, 20 or so will be selected to be recommended to the Queen for her approval, which she does personally. Over to you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Could I just recapitulate very quickly on the how to enter process? Peter has shown you a copy of the document. I mean, if this isn't easily traceable, the website reference is the best place. It's Queen's University Prizes / how to participate. It's on that domain. And of course, the entry document, as Peter says, sets out, you know, the how to enter procedure and the criteria against which the narrative should be written. I need to say that you will need 2 other documents also on the how to participate domain. One is the application form. It's 1 page, straightforward to complete. And also the entry cover sheet, which is also 1 page, in which you provide a short summary of the narrative. Both of those documents, the application form and the entry cover sheet, would be signed by your Vice-Chancellor or equivalent, and the current way to do this is through an electronic signature. We're quite happy with that. Then the 3 documents, entry document, application form, entry cover sheet, would come forward to info@royalanniversarytrust.org.uk. That's in the entry document. The other thing to say is deadline for submissions is the 10th of May 2021, and the timetable with the key assessment dates is also in the entry document, including, as Peter's mentioned, the consideration by the Awards Council of the shortlist, and that's in the autumn of this year. Okay, what is the assessment process seeking? Again, very briefly, Peter's covered this. The Prizes scheme is seeking to encourage and recognise work that is of high quality with outstanding and novel characteristics, but crucially is producing demonstrable public benefit. It should be a standout example of the best work of its kind that is being done in the UK in that field, and the assessment process would evaluate the extent to which the narrative can give evidence of its claims to meeting the criteria, and therefore the extent of its prizeworthiness. A claim for prizeworthiness is stronger if your narrative has coherence and clarity and impact on the assessors who will review it. And it will be helpful in their judgment, of course, if care is taken in addressing the 4 criteria. You have flexibility in how you do it, and we wouldn't presume to tell you how to do it, but it can be helpful to assessors if the 4 criteria are, you know, handily signposted, so they know which part of the criteria you're addressing. An entry is also more likely to persuade the assessment process of prizeworthiness if it's a convincing example of the best work that's being done, genuinely novel and distinctive, and as I've said, has clear benefits, and they should be verifiable benefits as well. So what would assessors then be seeking beyond that? Clearly, they would be looking for compelling evidence that the work has had a transformational impact and influence in the wider world. This might be nationally in many cases, and in many others it might be internationally. And that's quite important in terms of where the assessment process goes to seek sort of verification of what the claims are. So the assessment process itself is undertaken independently and confidentially, firstly by an external panel, which comprises around 250 individual reviewers. We call them readers, which a term you'll be familiar with, I'm sure. And they cover a wide range, a very, very extensive wide range of experience and expertise in many domains in the public and private sectors. And a good proportion of these will have served, and indeed some are serving in the field of education. And they support the trust in the process. All entries receive a minimum of 4 reviews, 4 independent external reviews from our readers, with the strongest assessed progressing to a further 2 independent reviews from the readers panel. They score, they provide written comments and justify their marks, and are asked to identify any questions that might be raised with entrance to the scheme, where further clarification or more information on claims might assist in further judgments of the merits of the entry and its prizeworthiness. I mean, quite often, I think what we're saying is, although you have one chance to make one entry of up to 10 pages, the process accepts that an entry that comes forward may not have all the data or validations that necessarily would satisfy the assessment process. And if that's the case, and if an entry has been well marked, we would come back to you sometime in the summer seeking further succinct and summarized information. Now this is, yeah. I'm just going to leap in.
Let me try. I mean, this is exactly what happens. The first thing that happens to the entries is that they are read. Each of them is read by Alan and myself, because we have to have some kind of mental yardstick or moderation sort of idea against which to set the comments that we get. The 4 or 5 readers selected to read each entry individually are matched as best we can to the subject area, but not in a kind of rigorous or technical sense, because we go to technical sources later on. But the point I wanted to make was that they will be looking at your narrative as a story. What is this about? And how do I feel? Let me try and concretize this. How do I feel when I've finished reading the narrative of institution X or Y? Do I feel engaged by it? Can I understand it? Does it appeal to me? You know, is there a story there which is interesting and comprehensible? Or is it slightly tangled with the minutiae? Where is the real theme of this? What is this really about? So I think the name of the game, if I can put it crudely like that, is that the readers, the 4 or 5 individual readers, you need them to come back to us, having ticked it up, saying, continue to look at this entry, rather than, well, I'm not terribly impressed by this. I think there's quite a lot of similar stuff going on. I'm not convinced. You know, put it on one side. Alan, sorry, but I just to concretize the process a bit in
that's exactly when we've moved beyond, we call them stage 1 and 2, that's readers' assessments. Those that really do look as if they have the potential and the claim. The claim has been well made, and perhaps we've had back very good information from the what we call questions to institutions process, where we're following up where we need to get that additional information. We would then very often seek a technical or specialist opinion from national or international sources who would be very familiar with the field of work that you're in. And we would be asking them really two questions, I think, principally, which is one about their opinion from their area of expertise on the rating, how they would rate the entry themselves, both in terms of the national comparisons or international comparisons, depending what the work is. And of course, you know, where it would stand, because this is, and they realise this is national competition. It's very demanding, and we're looking for work really of stellar appeal here that has national consideration around it. So it's bringing together both what our readers have said to us, what the technical appraisals have said, or opinions coming back, and we could go to quite a number of sources and often do. We would take a view after that from the UK governments, covering especially the education brief, and they do comment and give us a view, and that might, of course, take on board comments from their agencies, including the funding councils, and we can approach them quite separately. Funding councils might be quite integral to the bid and to the support for the work, and it would be important to get an independent view from them.
Just very quickly, we go also to the devolved national governments of the UK, so yes, that application entries coming from Scottish institutions, Welsh, Northern Ireland, will be referred usually through the permanent secretaries of those governments for advice. And when we say we refer to, in the case of England entries, you know, to government, that would be in the first instance to Whitehall departments. So something with a defence aspect to it, we would go to the MOD at permanent secretary level. So we want to make sure we go where we need to go at the right level to get an opinion. And we are pretty dogged, I think, in seeking out these opinions. We don't often take no for an answer, but sometimes if you go around the houses in a particular department and nobody has heard of the work, we are forced to the conclusion that there's not much we can say in that box when we come to the Awards Council decision. You know, the Awards Council is the recommending body. It's going to meet at the end of September, and it will expect a dossier or a case from us, from the executive, explaining why, in our view, the process has shown that an institution, that the work submitted by an institution merits the award of a Queen's Prize. It's got to be watertight, and it has to stand up against scrutiny, and it has to have the process therefore has to have great integrity, so that mistakes are not made, and that the sovereign is not given recommendations that will look in any way imperfect in the light of day. So that is I just wanted to add that sort of, you know, UK country dimension. Alan, where have we got to? You were on.
I think a final point is worth making, Peter, and that is that is our role in the process, the moderating process. As we've said, that much of this is based on the advice we get, the opinions, and the markings, ratings from external sources. Nearly all of this, of course. But the moderation it is important, because there are cases where, for one reason or another, either an entry isn't clear enough, or the assessors haven't understood it, but it may be that there's first-class work here that is rather obscured. So Peter and I have a phrase, I think. We will say that an entry is not dead until it is absolutely dead.
Until it is very actually dead.
Very actually dead.
In the words of... no, it's alive until it's dead. The presumption that we work on the presumption that there is merit in every entry, and it is our responsibility to discover this. And we will often, you know, or from time to time, we put an entry on one side because it seems to have run out of steam at a certain stage in the inquiries. Then we hear something, it could be almost accidentally, but somebody will say, oh, that rings a bell actually, because I think it might be quite important, from specialist knowledge. And then you pull it back from, as it were, from the roadside and look at it again and revive it. So there's that presumption that an entry remains alive until it is very, very truly dead, and not dead in a qualitative sense. It's probably fantastic work, but in the context of what is required by the scheme in terms of shown benefit, of demonstrated benefit, that may come in 4 years' time, or it may come in 2 years' time, but it has to be there now. It has to be across the threshold from, you know, the trial of a new pharmaceutical therapy. It has to be across the threshold into patient care and treatment, for example. The other point to underline is that Alan and I, are available on the end of an email, and we use the education.gov.uk email because that's where our sort of our home is. We're independent, but we have a sort of physical home in the DFE. And so we are peter.chenery@education.gov.uk, and Alan is alan.lawson@education.gov.uk. We are amenable to being contacted at any time to answer questions or provide a bit of advice. You know, we were thinking of this. What do you think? We've got 3 possible topics. What do you think? And we're very happy to say we can't possibly comment, or we can say, well, you know, number 1 looks quite interesting, but it's never ever won. That sort of topic has never ever won a Queen's Anniversary Prize. But, you know, it's up to you if you want to put it in. Number 2 looks fantastic. Are you sure the benefit is there yet? Are we going to find evidence of benefit if we start asking, you know, in the DOH or in Public Health England or wherever we're going to ask? So we will, and if we simply can't help you because we don't understand it, or we feel it's too sensitive a question, we will say, you know, terribly sorry, but press on. Is that helpful? Well, no, I can't say is that helpful. I'm saying it's helpful.
One other thing that may be helpful.
Yeah, and then we got some questions.
Yeah, it's just the fact that when you're looking at subject areas, and of course you can choose any subject area that you wish, but you do have a look to ensure that the work has been going for long enough. Now that doesn't mean 40 years, that doesn't mean decades, but it should be going long enough that there is observable benefits and verifiable benefits, you know, and a track record of outstanding work over a period of time. We've stopped giving a number, but I mean, we probably say that if the work's been going for 2 years, assessors might think it's a bit early, but up to 5 years, well, I mean, there may well be a case. So I think that's an important point to make. Peter, yes.
I think with 1 or 2 entries, which may have been very, very on the case, shall we say, over say 15 years, then there is sometimes a sort of bit of a gap. And reviewers will sometimes say, well, you know, I was very familiar with that work, say 10, 15 years ago, up to about 5 years ago. I'm not quite sure what's been going on since then. The point being that the Queen's Anniversary Prizes are not a recognition, an honour for work done. they are partly an honour for work done, because that's the bedrock and the platform from which the work you're doing now springs. But there's a lot of emphasis on the sustainability of the work. Where is the work going? You know, if it's specifically funded work from funding sources, you know, is the funding going to continue? Or is it all going to sort of wind down with a happy result, but we can't tell you whether it's going to be around in a year's time or 2 years' time. As Alan says, you know, we don't put a figure on the number of years a piece of work has been sort of on the go, because it's a changing and a very fast-moving world. You know, we had very little, the scheme had very little cyber security work until relatively recently. We have relatively little AI work until relatively recently, but things change. But I mean, can I just cut in? There's a question about whether the prize is, and I wrote it down hastily, is not suitable for small groups, e.g. small groups of researchers. I mean, again, it's not a complete numbers game, but the founders of the scheme wanted to draw a distinction when they set up the scheme in 1994 between work that was personal to a leading researcher and his or her team that might or might not be rewarded with an international prize such as the Nobel Prize, or a UK personal honour such as an OBE or another similar designation. The Queen's Anniversary Prize are not for that sort of thing. You know, a small team, a cluster of researchers. It needs to be broader than that. You know, how big is the unit? It may be a relatively small unit of researchers or an institute of some kind in a university, which in the general context of the size of the institution might be relatively small. That's not really, it doesn't really matter. And I mean, I can think of various quite specialized bits of work which have had recognition in the scheme. But when you go into the specialization in that institution, you look up on the web, you'll find that there are quite a lot of postdoc researchers, there's an establishment there. There are relationships with other departments and faculties. You know, so it isn't 3 people in a small room doing wonderful work and then bursting forth with a great discovery. That's hugely obviously valuable, but it may not be for this scheme. I hope that that might have answered the question that came in about that. And there was another one which I saw come up, but I didn't get the note out of it.
It's, can you provide any steer on the need for balanced narrative across the 4 criteria? Okay,
yeah, that is, I understand the meaning of that question. It is extremely, in a sense, I'm talking a little bit sort of unofficially here, so please don't spread it around. But with a British university of standing, you know, there is not usually a great issue about quality. I mean, if an entry, well, let me put it this way: it's very rare for an entry to come in which is of manifestly mediocre quality. Let me put it like that. It might be very niche, it might be very particular, but you could see that there's a lot of intellectual work going on and there's research going on. So in a sense, quality is taken as read, but the work needs to be good and it can't fall down on that. Innovation, the quality of some groundbreaking quality, some aspect of the work that differentiates it from other work that is going on in this country and maybe elsewhere, but primarily in this country, some evidence of that distinctiveness is important. Although there's nothing new under the sun, we're looking for some genuine bit of transformational work. That will almost certainly come out in the benefit in the wider world. because the test is the benefit in the wider world. The benefit to the institution is to a degree taken as read. You can see where I'm going with this heretical advice, that if an institution has work of high quality being done by a team of high quality within a department which has high academic standards, there will be a sort of a knock-on effect, or implications for the general standing of the institution, and no doubt for its funding and for the quality of the people it attracts, whether they're students or staff. So there is that sort of benefit to the institution criterion. Sometimes it becomes too much like a numbers game, I think, Alan. Well, we have so much money from Unilever, we get so much from the BBSRC, and so we're invited in a sense to add up all the revenue streams, the income streams that are derived from this work, and be impressed by the total figure. I mean, that is not, it's important, of course, to the institution, but it's not really what the scheme is ultimately looking for.
Yeah.
It is, so I would say that if you were going to concentrate on the criteria without neglecting any of them, but number 2 and number 4 are extremely important. An entry that is of brilliant quality but can't say anything on number 2 or number 4 is not going to succeed. Is that fair?
That's absolutely fair, Peter. I think so. And I mean, of course,
I want to incriminate you in this.
No, we're aware as well that entries will come forward from research-intensive universities, and they will come forward from universities that are not research-intensive at all, and may indeed be teaching institutions. So, if you were saying to us, well, would you look at our REF and our rating, and how does that weigh in? I think it very much in sync with what Peter's saying. I mean, it's not irrelevant. It is relevant, but it's not everything. I mean, this is about the case that you make, how strong it is, and how convincing. Peter, could I just take something from Kate at Loughborough? It says, are you able to tell more about the scoring process? For example, are all sections equally weighted? And I mean, this goes on from what you were saying, that okay. I mean, this isn't about scores, but it is helpful. I mean, it's like a dipstick that you put it in, and you just sort of take the temperature in a different metaphor. And we do give guidance. All of the 4 separate criterion have equal weighting. There are a maximum number of points, and it's up to the judgment of the assessor based on what they've read to give a score. And we set out for them what we want them to regard as prize-worthy. There is a numeric mark which is useful, and it is indicative, and so it's the same number for a maximum for each of the 4 criteria, but the supporting comments are very important in this respect, and we probably pay more attention to that. But there is an overall mark where we ask the assessor to step back, as we would all do, critically evaluating a piece of work, and say, bearing in mind what you've said, the markings you've given, do you believe, and we need a frank opinion here, is this prize-worthy work of a national standard that we could ask the Queen to award a prize for? So, and that comes out of just one, a slightly different number, but by and large, numbers are there as it were, as a dipstick. They help us, but it is the quality of the comment that guides us.
Yeah. We do not use the numbers. I mean, for example, the readers will get a form. Each of them will get a form, and the 4 criteria will be boxed in the form. And they will say, and the form will say, if you think they have done well against criteria 1, don't mark it below 15 or whatever it is, mark it up to 30 on a little scale, etc. If you think they haven't done well, then you mark it below that marking number. But the numbers are not put into some kind of meat grinder and averaged out they are not the determinant in the case that is put to the Awards Council for the shortlist, or in the shortlist. There is curiosity, I think I can say, there is curiosity among the members of the Awards Council. And I should say that the Awards Council consists of the trustees of the trust, whose names are published on the web, plus usually the permanent secretaries of the Scottish Government, the Welsh Government, and the head of the Northern Ireland Civil Service, plus the permanent secretary of the DFE, and plus a representative of the Cabinet Office, plus one or two others. And for example, Lynn Gladden, Professor Lynn Gladden, Shell Professor of Chemistry at Cambridge, FRS, was a member of the Awards Council in the last round. So a distinguished group who need to be persuaded that there is a case, not how much did they score, what was the average of their marks, because marks can be very erratic. They are really designed in some ways to help the readers in their quest for a comment, you know, because it's sometimes when you're looking at trying to judge something, you've got a sort of vague idea about whether you want to, how you want to describe it. But sometimes a little bit of alpha, beta, gamma, or alpha, beta, double minus, query plus, you know, can sort of help, because it's in itself, it's rather meaningless, but it is, you're saying, you know what you're saying about it in your mind, and then you know what to write down in your actual comment, which is, as Alan says, the key thing. So anyway, I hope that helps. I would ask you to do look at archived, just terrible memory these days, it must be the lockdown. Do look on the web at the archived prize winners section, because that will tell you the spread of the topics and what they were all doing. It's quite handy, you know, and it's amazing how, you know, institutions are not even aware that they themselves won 2 Queen's Anniversary Prizes 10 years ago or 8 years ago. You know, because people change, and you get new people in, they're not familiar with the history.
Peter, sorry. Just one other. This is quite interesting, because we're asked if you have staff who already have recognition, such as from the Queen's Birthday Honours list, such as OBE, MBE, would this be an advantage or disadvantage, as their work has already been recognised or irrelevant? Peter, it's not relevant at all. Doesn't make any difference. This touches on an important point as well, doesn't it? That the prize is an institutional prize. It is unique in the honour system, genuinely unique, because it's the only honour in the system that is presented, and there are very strange definitions of this. It's presented by a senior member of the royal family in the ballroom at Buckingham Palace in the manner of a personal investiture. And that is, there's no other, but it's not for individuals at the institution. The Queen's Prize is for the institution as a whole, whether or not there's a whole institution. It's like, I suppose, an injection that reaches all parts with luck, and can be used by the institution to for its ends, you know, for its promotional, marketing, business, morale boosting ends, you know, irrespective of what topic was actually put in. There was a question about societal benefit and how we assess that. Have I got that correct? How do we to answer it? Yeah, here it is. Yes, you've said that societal benefits need to be verifiable. To what degree should we try to point readers in the right direction to be able to do that verification? Good, very good question. It is very handy for us running the process to have signposts. It is much less handy, and we were asked this question the other day, should we provide testimonials to attach to the main narrative? Answer, probably not. But signposts in the text about, for example, partnerships with business, partnerships with international organizations. We work with WHO.
We work with the LEPs. We work with, Alan, there are lots of these things around, chambers of commerce, or
Yes.
you know, international FAO, etc., international agencies,
Yes, charity
UNDP,
bodies, funding councils.
charities, exactly. So pointers like that are really, really useful because we'll go to them through our own contacts. And we've got a lot of experience of going to, you know, going to UN agencies, for example, or other international agencies, European Union, etc. So that signposts are useful, extremely useful. But attaching references that may look rather similar, although they may be delivered in good faith, that is not so useful. And I would be, it doesn't happen quite so much in the FE entries, but an excessive number of case studies is to be avoided, because unless they add something different, you can get a string of similar things, and you're in the end you're saying, well, okay, but where's the new value added? We understand what this is doing, but why put in two, or why put in three of these? You know, so signals are really helpful.
Yeah, Peter, I think it's worth saying as well that we do ask in the narratives to, if you can, make every attempt to anonymize the name of your institute. In fact, you should do that. You should anonymize the name of the institution. It shouldn't be clear to assessors exactly who's submitting, because you know, we want them to every extent possible to sort of go through blind assessment and base their assessment on the value of the work. Of course, in reality, I mean, the particular references you give, the external validation sources, and maybe the nature of the work, or even sometimes the names of professors that are working, you know, is a giveaway. And I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, it'd be interested for Peter's views on this, but I think if you do the best you can, but don't over worry about saying, oh my goodness, they're bound to know it's us because there's a link here.
Yeah, I mean, bearing in mind that, I mean, I did a quick look at our readers list. I think it's about 250 people on the readers panel. They all work pro bono work. They all offer their help and advice and experience to us on a pro bono basis. I think about 100 of those have professorial status.
Yes.
So there's a heavy, and some of the names are, I should say, in academia, instantly recognizable. You know, people who have helped us over the years, having stepped back from a direct role in academic life. They volunteer to look at entries for us and give us the benefit of their wisdom and knowledge. Among that group, therefore, you're going to find a lot of awareness of what is going on. And I remember a case where, you know, a very distinguished reader who is possibly at FRS was sort of saying, well, claims are being made about this institute, which I personally do not recognize at all when I was running it. You see. And okay, well, you take all of that, either with both with a pinch of salt and on its merits. You know, that there is always some truth, but you dig away. But the point of anonymity is becoming, I suppose, in the modern world, slightly more marginal than it used to be in the trust, in the way we operate the scheme. Would you say so, Alan? I mean, it's not.
I would say, yes.
You know, it's pretty obvious in many cases that if it's about a particular bit of engineering where it is likely to be going on, you know, and the more detailed the account becomes, you know, the more obvious it is. That's not a problem. I mean, it's always open to us. If we discover that, you know, we've sent it to 4 readers, 2 of whom appear to be alumni of the institution, we'll just send it to another 2. You know, we'll just sort of put it out to 2 or 3 more people. It's done in a very friendly way, with the aim of discovering the merit of the entry, because we want to advise the sovereign in the right way. because if we don't do that, the scheme collapses. Nobody enters because they say, well, there's no point in having one of those because they don't mean anything. But the reason why people do take an interest is because it is well known that it does mean something. And Her Majesty the Queen, if I may say so, takes still a very strong personal interest in the scheme. She will see the list of recommendations of institutions to be awarded the prize. She will look at it and sign it off with a pen, not just, oh, that's all right. And she will sign the certificates that are awarded, that are handed to the institutions, alongside the medallion that is produced to commemorate the occasion. The Queen will take in a bunch of certificates with her space for her signature, and then I get a call about 10 days later saying, come and collect them. The Queen has signed each one in her own hand. And that's a strong indication of high personal interest from the sovereign in this scheme. Prince of Wales, as you probably know, does the presentations and has done now for the last, excuse me, 3 rounds, at the request of and on behalf of the Queen, and he's followed the same basic ceremony, you know, with Duchess of Cornwall alongside him, as the Duke of Edinburgh used to be alongside the Queen. So there we are with that ceremonial.
We've got one final question, and it's about formats. This is
okay.
Quite forward. Yeah. What format do we need to submit the entry in? A standard Word document, glossy brochures? Do we need images, or does it help? And I think we'd probably say, wouldn't we, that a standard Word document is absolutely fine, because assessors are judging the merits of your entry on the text. It is text that's really important here, but glossy brochures come forward. It's not that we say you shouldn't do it, but
the occasional graph.
Yeah, yes.
I think we used to say the occasional graph.
I think it's selective use. If images help, and they do,
yeah,
selectively it's useful. Yeah. It's using space. And I guess the other thing we'd say is, please,
readable font.
Readable font. Yeah, I think we've said 11 or 12. Please avoid
12,
because it's not kind to us or to the readers.
No, readable font, but it's also a discipline. I mean, to get it into 10 pages is part of the sort of general discipline of writing it up and telling the story. I think you know, visually breaking it up a bit is useful.
Yes.
You know, but a few gaps, a few sort of disconnects in the way it looks on the page. Yeah. So you don't have a whole page. As I say, Alan and I have to read all of these. We're looking for an easy life at this point. That brings us to more or less the time, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it's that. I can't see any more questions, but I mean, as you said, we're available if there's follow-ups. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, if there are no more questions at this point, I mean, thank you very much for the interest. And I should have said at the beginning that we hope that you are coping, you and yours are coping and keeping safe in the present situation. It's increasingly rare now to find somebody who hasn't got a relative or a friend who's been affected by this. So we wish you well. We repeat our offer of advice and guidance at any time over the email or a telephone call. And we look forward to receiving entries, should you decide to put one in, by the 10th of May, giving a little bit of extra time in this round, obviously because of the pandemic. But we wanted to keep to the original timetable for advising the Queen, which I think the Palace are pleased with, because it is all partly to do with business as usual. We have to get through all this, and it is we were rather determined to try and keep to the schedule. And so far so good, I suppose. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah. Mhm.
So thank you very much, and thank you, Alan, for all your support.
Right. Bye-bye.
We're now due to sign off. Is that right? Do I do that?
You're right, I think. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.